Have you seen Mark Cuban out there absolutely annihilating Donald Trump on TV show after TV show, on the radio? It's almost like you can't turn anything on right now without seeing Mark Cuban taking the fight directly to Donald Trump. And I'm telling you, this is Donald Trump's worst nightmare, an actual billionaire saying that Donald Trump is a horrible businessman and how his policies would be devastating for our economy. I want to get into all the latest from Mark Cuban. First, my name is Brett Meiselas here with the MeidasTouch Network. Remember to hit subscribe. We are on our way to 3.5 million subscribers, and we cannot do that without you. So Vice President Kamala Harris yesterday held an economic event in Pittsburgh. Mark Cuban went on Fox to speak about it and also to speak about Donald Trump's, quote, insane economic policies. And you just know that somewhere in Mar-a-Lago, there was a ketchup bottle going through some things. Watch Mark Cuban on Fox.
Mark, you argue that, and it's always good to have you, you argue that Donald Trump's are particularly, I think you used the word insane. What did you mean by that?
Yep. Well, first of all, strategic tariffs aren't bad. So if a company's trying to dump, or a country's trying to dump in the United States and we have a manufacturer there, tariff them, that's great. But across the board tariffs, 10 or 20% is just inflationary. It's a tax on the American consumer. But to make matters even worse, and what's truly insane, when you threaten a legendary company like John Deere with a 200% tariff if they move, but only a 10 or 20% tariff on China, what you're doing is you're making it easy for the Chinese competitors to take business away from John Deere. That is the definition of insane.
A lot of your business colleagues say the definition of insane is supporting Kamala Harris, yet you do. You're a smart, savvy businessman. You came from nothing to be a multi-billionaire, so you're pretty good at what you do. What do you see in her that you don't see in Donald Trump?
I think she's thorough. If you look at Donald, right, when he talks about his policies, they're very impetuous, they're impulsive, they're, set to match whatever's happening at a rally. Whereas with the Harris campaign and Kamala herself, she's very, very thorough. She's very precise. Her team really vets every idea. And to me, that's important as a business person because you can trust what she says. Think about what happens when Donald comes out and says, I'm going to put a 10% cap on credit card interest rates. The next thing that happens isn't that he explains why, it's that everybody around him explains what he says. He can't explain it for himself. Everybody's got to explain for him, or whether it's a 10 or 20 or 60% tariff, or the 200% on John Deere. With Kamala Harris, no one has to explain for her. She takes the time to vet her policies thoroughly. And when she says them and presents them, they are what they are. They're self-explanatory.
But she doesn't.
And you saw Mark Cuban there bring up Donald Trump's ideas to implement these 200% tariffs on John Deere. Here's Trump threatening just that in Pennsylvania this week.
I just noticed behind me John Deere tractors. I know a lot about John Deere. I love the company. But as you know, they've announced a few days ago that they're going to move a lot of their manufacturing business to Mexico. I'm just notifying John Deere right now. If you do that, we're putting a 200% tariff on everything that you want to sell into the United States, so that if I win, John Deere is going to be paying a 200%. They haven't started it yet. Maybe they haven't even made the final decision yet, but I think they have. John Deere is going to, and anybody else that does this, because it's hurting our farmers, it's hurting our manufacturing. And if you do that, you're going to have a 200% tariff put on the product that you make in Mexico, right across the border. They think they're going to make product cheaper in Mexico and then sell it in for the same price as they did before, make a lot of money by getting rid of our labor and our jobs, and really a great name, because John Deere is a great name. I buy a lot of John Deere, tremendous. I'm one of their big customers. I buy a lot of John Deere product as a private person. But if they're going to do that, we're going to put a 200% tariff on everything that they want to send back into the United States, which means one of two things. Our country's going to make a lot of money, or they're not going to build, they're not going to open, and or they're going to sell it to another country. They're entitled to do that. If they want to build in the country, in the United States, there's no tariff. You can go ahead and you can build in any one of the 50 states. You can go ahead. But if they don't want to do that, we're going to put a 200% tariff on John Deere. And you know what's going to happen? They're going to announce very shortly, if they think I'm going to win, or if I do win, they're going to announce that they're not going to build in Mexico.
Mark Cuban was also on MSNBC highlighting Vice President Kamala Harris's leadership and saying, just look at what she's been able to accomplish in the past, 45 or 60 days in building her campaign organization. Imagine how she will be able to act when she is president of the United States. Watch.
I think what a lot of business people don't get, I look at the Harris campaign as a company and Kamala as the CEO, right? She's had, 45 days, 60 days to build an entire organization. And you look at the results. She went from negative favorability ratings. She went from recognition being relatively low. She went from being way behind in every single poll you looked at. And now look where she's at. Worst case, she's tied. And in many cases, she's ahead. When you're able to turn around a battleship like a presidential campaign and go from being way behind to tied or ahead, you're doing a lot right. And on the flip side, if you had what seemed like an insurmountable lead, and now you've given up that entire lead to another CEO, you're getting fired. Right? So I think that's the beautiful part of looking at what she's doing. She's run her campaign like a CEO. She's had success. And when I go to talk to business people, that's what I tell them. She's actually running her organization like a CEO. And that's the evidence that you need to know that she'll be a great leader, that she understands business, that she understands organizations, and she'll be a friend and partner to business across the board.
Mark. And one of the things that Mark Cuban, who is actually like a good businessman, points out is that Donald Trump likes to throw out these policies and just kind of say anything, but then he leaves his staffers and other people to try to make sense of what the heck it is that he is actually saying. Watch Cuban call Trump out for that here.
No one talking about Donald Trump says, boy, that really was a nuanced position. Boy, he really was able to show us a detailed policy depth on what he was talking about. It's the exact opposite. Whenever Donald Trump says something, everybody else has to explain for him what he said, right? He can't ever, it's never like, okay, I'll get to that. I didn't convey it right. I'll give you the details on why I said what I said. It's the opposite. It's all his acolytes, all his supporters saying, no, this is what he really meant. It's the opposite with Vice President Harris. When she says what she says, everybody knows what she means. That is such a stark difference between the two.
And Cuban had nothing but positive things to say about Vice President Harris's speech in Pittsburgh on the economy. He gave it an absolutely glowing review. Take a listen to his review here.
No one talking about Donald Trump says, boy, that really was a nuanced position. Boy, he really was able to show us a detailed policy depth on what he was talking about. It's the exact opposite. Whenever Donald Trump says something, everybody else has to explain for him what he said, right? He can't ever, it's never like, okay, I'll get to that. I didn't convey it right. I'll give you the details on why I said what I said. It's the opposite. It's all his acolytes, all his supporters saying, no, this is what he really meant. It's the opposite with Vice President Harris. When she says what she says, everybody knows what she means. That is such a stark difference between the two.
And Cuban brought up Vice President Harris's comments on removing red tape to allow people to build things quicker in this country. Watch Vice President Harris say this for herself at the Economic Club in Pittsburgh.
And not only must we build the industries of the future in America, we must also build them faster. There's a time for patience and there's a time for impatience. That's not in Ecclesiastics, but just went off script for a minute, Mayor. But the simple truth is in America, it takes too long and it costs too much to build. Whether it's a new housing development, a new factory, or a new bridge, projects take too long to go from concept to reality. It happens in blue states, it happens in red states. And it's a national problem. And I will tell you this, China is not moving slowly. They're not. And we can't afford to either. If we are to compete, we can't afford to either. As president, if things are not moving quickly, I will demand to know why, and I will act. I will work with Congress, workers, and businesses, cities and states, community groups, and local leaders to reform permitting, to cut red tape, and get things moving faster. Because, look, as I said, patience may be a virtue, but not when it comes to job creation or America's competitiveness. Many of you know the Empire State Building. You know how long it took to build that? 1 year. The Pentagon, you know how long that took? 16 months. No one can tell me we can't build quickly in our country.
PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you can watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. So PrizePicks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineups stay in play, even if one of your players gets injured. PrizePicks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. PrizePicks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. I've had the best experience with PrizePicks imaginable, from my winnings to the easy and simple playing experience. PrizePicks truly separates themselves from others in the space in a big way. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code Meidas and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code Meidas, MEIDAS, on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. Here's another clip of Mark Cuban on MSNBC with Nicole Wallace speaking about Kamala Harris's support of businesses, including small businesses, and comparing it to Donald Trump's policies regarding businesses. Check it out.
Well, the big question, obviously, is the economy. And, you know, the people on the right, they're always talking about being a Marxist or a communist, which is ridiculous. And she really put that to bed today. She was very clear that she was going to partner with business. She was going to give business incentives to grow, that she respected and supported every size business from small to large. And that really the future of our country militarily, economically, is going to be driven by new technologies that she understands and that she supports. It's just just so different from what Donald Trump is doing. And I think it's a real positive for the entire business community.
And here's another great clip of Vice President Harris at that economic club event in Pittsburgh, speaking about how she wants to reform our tax laws to make it easier for businesses to let workers share in their company's success. I love this.
And we will reform our tax laws to make it easier for businesses to let workers share in their company's success. And I will challenge the private sector to do more, to lift up workers through equity, profits, and benefits, so more people can share in America's success and prosperity.
Then Mark Cuban appeared on CNN with Jake Tapper, where he completely flipped the script on Donald Trump regarding Donald Trump's attacks, trying to label Kamala Harris a socialist. Cuban noted how Donald Trump's policies are actually far more like socialism. Watch.
On a recent Harris campaign call, you compared policy proposals made by Trump to those from independent Senator Bernie Sanders, who's a socialist. What do you mean?
Well, it was a race for socialism, right? Bernie said that credit card companies should cap their rates, their interest rates at 15%. Donald Trump, being the socialist that he is, had to beat Bernie. So Donald Trump went out and recommended that interest rate caps be set to 10%. The fact that he's even suggesting price controls and price caps is socialism 101. You haven't heard that from the vice president. You have heard that from Donald Trump.
Well, then how do you interpret? How do you interpret what she's doing in terms of price gouging, taking on price gouging by food companies? Because a lot of critics have said that is a form of price controls.
I'm glad you asked me that, Jake, because taking on price gouging is not price controls. She's not saying what the price of tomatoes should be. What she's saying is when there's a crisis, and there will be other crises, there'll be hurricanes, there'll be tornadoes, there'll be floods, there'll be other disasters. And when those disasters happen, she wants to be in a position to be able to say, no, you can't jack up those prices by 40%. You have to stay within a particular realm, a particular guideline. And by the way, there are already 37 states that have similar guidelines. All she's doing is saying, we're just going to make that a national law. So that's certainly not price caps or price controls at all. Donald Trump, on the other hand, is the king of price caps.
All right, Mark Cuban, always good to see you, sir. Thanks so much.
Here's Mark Cuban in another event this week, speaking about why Donald Trump's plan to impose a 20% tariff on all imported goods is a terrible idea.
There's nothing wrong with strategic tariffs. So if somebody in China or any foreign company is subsidizing a product, let's say steel, so that that manufacturer in China is able to sell in the United States at less than cost, then it makes perfect sense to incorporate tariffs. You're seeing that with EVs, and you're seeing it with other products as well. And so for strategic tariffs, they should always be looked at as a potential tool. Where it turns into lunacy is when you do across-the-board tariffs. And so to say that we're going to tariff 10% or 20% or 60% for China or any other countries, that's just inflationary, and that's just a tax on the American people. That's a sales tax through and through.
Mark Cuban also recently appeared on Brian Tyler Cohen's channel, where he was speaking about Trump's idea for a 20% across-the-board tax on imported products, calling it a national sales tax on American consumers. By the way, Brian Tyler Cohen, friend of MeidasTouch, has a great new book out called Shameless. Make sure you check that out. Here's the clip of Cuban with Brian Tyler Cohen.
But the idea of taxing everything and anything specifically because I don't like the people we're from or the country where it's originating is insane, because that truly is the sales tax that Kamala is talking about. And not only is it a tax to be paid on that product that's being imported, but there's also an additional tax on the company, because you have to deal with all the administration of filing the forms for the tariffs, or hiring a broker, dealing with the record keeping. So all these things, particularly if you're a smaller company, right, becomes not just a tariff on the tax on the buyer of the products, or a tax on the buyer of the products, but also a tax on the smaller company that's implementing it, or even a big company for that matter.
Here's another clip of Brian's interview with Mark Cuban, where Cuban talks about how Donald Trump has done absolutely nothing for small businesses. Watch.
Donald Trump certainly has made an effort to support those larger companies through lower corporate rates, through other types of opportunities that he's created for him. But he's done nothing for the small business person, right? You hear Kamala Harris talking about efficiency when it comes to starting a business. You hear Kamala Harris talking about raising the deduction from $5,000, which is a meaningless number these days in starting a business, to $50,000, right? You hear her talking about child tax credits with, if you're starting a business and you can pay for childcare for, your children or child, that allows you the freedom to go start a business, right? So she's talked over and over again about the economic opportunities that she's trying to create for small to medium-sized business. And she's just used the term entrepreneurs and founders over and over again. You haven't heard that from Donald Trump at all, whether he was in office or since then. That's just not in his DNA. I asked a question on Twitter, had he ever invested in a startup or a company that didn't involve any of his relatives? And nobody could give me an answer, right? I didn't know the answer, and I didn't know what to expect, because there could have been 20 companies he helped somebody, friends of his son, friends of whoever. Nobody came up with a single company. And to me, that says volumes about who he is, because to me, it's rewarding when I go out and invest in startups, right? If I'm helping somebody else chase the American dream or reach the American dream, that's why I do Shark Tank, right? To help all these companies. It's a beautiful thing, right? That's what makes this country different than so many others. He doesn't think that way. And so he's not thinking in terms of smaller companies, startups, the Etsy companies, the eBay resellers, right? He could care less. And to me, that's a great failing. Well, Kamala on the flip side said, okay, we had 5 million or whatever business applications. We're going to 25 million, right? That's what drives the economy. 68% of jobs are from smaller companies.
And then you got to hear what Mark Cuban said on CNBC about Kamala Harris's pro-business record and how her policies will help entrepreneurs. Check this out.
I mean, literally, if you read the transcript of her speech yesterday, she's talked more about entrepreneurs and helping them have access to investment and making it easier for people to invest in startups than any president that I've ever heard talk about startups and entrepreneurs.
So to the extent
literally, she listens, right? This is not something where it's just her policy team comes out and says, Mark, or whoever, let's hope this works. No, she's like, list me things you think we should be talking about. You're the entrepreneur. You invest in more startups than anybody I know. What do you think we should be doing, and what's going to increase the number of investments in startups? And I've had other conversations with her team where it's like, I literally go through and say, the higher the capital gains tax, the more difficult it is to invest in riskier investments. And the people who have the hardest time getting risk capital are women, people of color, young kids that are coming out of colleges. Exactly. The people you want to take risk on, the higher the cap gains rate, the harder it is to invest in them for obvious reasons. And they understand that, and they've adapted as a result.
Isn't it great seeing Mark Cuban out there, folks? And you know that this is absolutely torturing Donald Trump. He cannot handle being told by an actual successful businessman how much of a business failure he is and how horrible his policies are for the economy. It's great to see Mark Cuban also highlighting Vice President Harris's pro-business record. These are the kinds of messages that need to be shared far and wide. I would love to get your thoughts. So let me know your thoughts in the comments to this video. I love reading them. I try to respond to as many as I can. Also, in order to make sure these videos get out there, make sure you are subscribed to this YouTube channel. Make sure you hit the like button and share these videos with some friends. All right. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you soon.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Midas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.